Let's get corrupted. What is going on, everybody? It's your boy Joe with Meteoric Serpents coming back at you for another episode of the Colubrid Corruption Podcast. Guys, I hope you're all doing super well this week. Like I said on social media, it's a double feature week this week, and I got another great episode in store for you guys. This is episode number 56 with Chaz from More Than Morelia. But we'll get through this intro stuff first, and we'll bring them right on. I did say this on the Instagram post. This episode is pre-recorded as well. We're recording this like a day in advance, so not anything, super early or crazy. You're hearing everything up to date with Chaz. So, yeah. But if it's your guys' first time tuning in, or if you've been here before, make sure you hit a like on today's podcast. Make sure you hit the subscribe button on YouTube. Let's get those subscribers up, get those likes up, share it to your friends. Anyone who's into Colubrids, I think they'd thoroughly enjoy this show. And we've talked about a bunch of different species on a bunch of different episodes. So definitely share it out to your friends. You could also listen to this on all the major audio podcasting platforms like Apple, Spotify, YouTube Music, everything like that. Make sure to give it a 5-star review on there. And yeah, that helps out the algorithm as well. Guys, you could also make sure you follow me on all my social media platforms. I have them all listed out. It's pretty much at Meteoric Serpents everywhere. That's where you could go follow me. In the description, you'll also find the social media to our guest every episode. You'll find that in the description. Let's see here. Oh, I'm wearing the shirt for once. I haven't worn this shirt in a very long time, but make sure you're supporting USARK and USARK Florida. Those are the organizations that fight for our rights to keep our reptiles, whether as, this is just a hobby or if it's a business for you. Legislation could be going on in your backyard and you want to make sure that that USARK is fighting against it, making sure we get to keep our animals in full capacity. So definitely support those organizations. It's very affordable for the lowest tier memberships, and yeah, go do that. Also, make sure you go check out, in the first link in the description is the the link to the Meteoric Serpents Patreon. That's another way you could support this show. It's a way to say, like, thanks for putting it on. There's also behind the scenes content. I put out like pre-recorded episodes like this, although this one's only a day in advance from when it's getting released. Like, you get episodes early if it's pre-recorded. You get to know what's going on in my collection firsthand. I don't always post everything to social media, so plus it's a cool group of people that are into Colubrids, and it's just a way to build a cool community. So yeah, go check that out. And all my Patreon members, I really appreciate you. Thank you for supporting me and this show. It's greatly appreciated. Also, thank you to the Show Me Reptiles show and the Show Me Marketplace that sponsors the Colubrid Corruption podcast. If you're like a show attender or a vendor, make sure you check out Show Me Reptiles website to find out where where the next show is that's near you. They do shows all over the country, pretty much like everywhere. So go check out and find out when the next show is happening near you. Then if you are a seller of reptiles, you can check out the Show Me Marketplace. It's a new platform for you to buy and sell reptiles. And if you're a seller, you could use the code corruption-50 to get 50% off your first year's membership on the Show Me Marketplace. So again, that's corruption-50 to get 50% off your first year's membership as a seller on the site. And then I forgot to do this at the beginning of the episode last week, but guys, Colubrid Fest 2025, we got to talk about it every week until it happens, at the Allen County War Memorial Coliseum in Fort Wayne, Indiana this year, September 12th through 14th. Guys, I've always said it. Colubrid Fest was fantastic last year, and it's going to be even bigger and better this year. Mark my words. That's a guarantee. So again, September 12th through 14th. If you have any questions, make sure you join the official Colubrid Fest group on Facebook. You could always message me on social media if you have any questions. And yeah. Last but not least, before we get this episode rolling, we have the hashtag Colubrid corruption of the week. And this is a recent picture on there that I happened to find. We got some Nerodia, Franklin County, Nerodia clarki. Cool little water snakes there from Nature Coast Colubrids. So go give them a follow. Thanks for supporting the show and putting the hashtag on there. Guys, if you want to be featured on, I do this on a weekly basis, hashtag Colubrid corruption on all of your Colubrid Instagram posts. And I do this once a week. Someone gets a little feature there. So yeah. And I think that's about it. Is that all I wanted to talk about? I think so. So without further ado, let's bring our guest on. We have a lot to talk about tonight. But everyone, please welcome Chaz from More Than Morelia. What's up, man? How are you doing?
How's it going, man?
Pretty good. Pretty good. This episode was a long time coming. We tried to do this last year. We tried to schedule it, but it didn't work out, and that's totally okay. But I'm very glad I was able to get you on finally. It's been working out that way. I keep asking the right people at the right time nowadays, at least, to get them on. So I'm glad you're here finally.
Yeah, I think the first time you had asked me was pretty early on in the show coming out.
Yeah.
And my second child was born, I think right at that same time.
Yeah.
We just could not get it to line up.
Yeah, you told me between, I think it was between yours and your wife's work schedule, plus like the baby sleep schedule. It just was not a fun time, and I totally get it. So no worries there.
I just now have them tucked in, so we're gonna cross our fingers and make sure those kids go to sleep.
Nice. All right, man. So for people who don't really know you, and I don't really know you super well either, would you mind giving a little bit of background about yourself, how you got into reptiles, and how that kind of brought you to where you are today with everything?
Yeah, I grew up in South Florida, Lake Worth area, so probably only about 30 minutes north of where you're located.
Of where I live. Yeah.
Right. And I think from the time I could walk, I probably had my head in a bush, and it's never left.
Okay.
I was catching lizards and frogs since the day I could walk. I'm sure of it. And as I grew, the fascination grew, and I mean, it's not that different of a story than everybody else's. I started really getting serious probably when I was like 13 years old, and like 13, 14, 15, started with crested geckos and grew that collection to, I probably had between like 250 and 300.
Oh, wow, really?
Yeah, when I was living down in Florida, and that was probably until the time I was 17 or 18, maybe. And I was just a lizard guy then. I was like catching wild caught lizards, the basilisk, the nitinoles, in Florida, and then keeping the crested geckos as my captive stuff. Really wasn't a snake guy until I turned like 20 old or so. I'll be 29 this year, so 8 or 9 years I've been like snake focused. I've completely switched now. I have like 7 or 8 lizards. Snakes.
Nice. Yeah, and what was it? I guess that kind of converted you over from lizards to snakes, because I know, you said 200, like 250, 300. That's a lot of geckos. That's like a pretty high scale collection. So what switched in your mind, literally, that made you make the switch over to snakes, and what really piqued that interest?
So I got out of the crested geckos when I got an opportunity to go down to southern Patagonia, the Chilean side of southern Patagonia. I was there for 3 months, and there was no way I could find anybody to watch my gecko collection for 3 months.
Gotcha.
So it was either take this trip that I really wanted to go on, and I'll admit at that point I was pushing out of the geckos decently hard. Geckos were a hell of a lot cheaper back in those days, especially for a majority of the stuff, even compared to now. I know people like to think that crusted geckos are cheap now. But it's like when you went to a show back in the day, like, man, $150 geckos were a lot of money.
Right.
And it was, like $25, $40 stuff. Not that there's not that now, but it was like shows full of these like cheap animals. There wasn't people with $700 geckos casually on their table as far as crusteds go.
Right.
And this was like pre-lily white, pre all of the whatever the names they got for
really high-end stuff now. Yeah.
Right. I think people had ideas that some of that stuff was possible, but most of the stuff that was around was like really nice line bred geckos, and that's where a lot of the money was coming from.
Okay.
So I kept a few animals between that time, but I got rid of 95% of those geckos. Went down to southern Patagonia for the 3 months. When I came back, I basically packed my stuff and moved to North Carolina. And I ended up working a job that was shift work. That was like 8 days on, 6 days off, away from home for the full 8 days. In the entire time that I was working that job for like 4 years, I was like, how the heck am I going to get back into reptiles, get back into snakes? It was like heavy on my mind. And I ended up transitioning into a position with that same job where I was just working primarily during the day and going home at night.
Okay.
So I started a couple projects at that time. I got a few pairs of Agronia. So I had, I think it's Gramani, the green ones, Depai, and I think Mixteca was one of the other species that I had.
Gotcha.
And I thought I was gonna love these lizards, and I just wasn't into it anymore.
Right.
When I went down to visit my parents in South Florida one day, and I was at trying to think of what's the shop that's right up the street from Underground.
It used to be called The Jungle. Now it's called Cold-Blooded Kingdom.
Yeah, it was the old Jungle, and I went there and I bought a Brettles python.
Okay.
It's like just like on the whim on vacation, and that was like the first snake I had owned in probably 12 years. Before that, I had a Rhino California King, which was like the first time I convinced my parents to let me get a snake, and the thing got out like 3 times, and they're like, your snake keeping days are done while you're living with us. So I ended up getting rid of the snake, and then that Brettles python was like my first introduction into snake keeping in my adult years.
Okay, nice. And that just led you down the path.
Yeah, that just led me down the path. I thought I was going to go into carpet pythons, super, super heavy. That was my original intention. Not that I don't love carpet pythons now, but I'm not going to do it super heavy. I'm just going to keep a few select pairs of what I really like.
Well, your name is more than Morelia for a reason, so I assume it had to start with carpets and then transition a little more to the Colubrids over time.
Right, that's exactly how it happened.
Yeah. Nice, man. So, okay, so you got back into it. You started a little bit with the carpets. What was the first, I'd say, like, Colubrid that really started to catch you? Because your collection is super impressive. And And just to preface for anyone that doesn't know Chaz, you have a lot of Asian species. I know you have some North Americans too. But what was it with the Colubrids that made you want to dive like really headfirst into everything that you have now?
I don't know where I originally saw the video, but I saw a giant blue beauty on somebody's video. I wish I could remember who it was, but I was like, holy crap. That is a very impressive snake. And
Yeah.
Man, I started hunting one down, and I was at a show up in Tennessee, and Josh Alder is the one who sold me my first Asian rat.
Oh, nice.
I don't even know if he knows that. I was actually in town. We were at a friend's wedding, and that show, it's the Lebanon show up there in Tennessee. And we were at a friend's wedding that was happening that same weekend. We went to the show for the day, and I bought the Blue Beauty. And we went to this wedding, and I was sitting in the hotel room after the wedding, and I was like, I'm going back and I'm buying another one. So I went back the next day and bought a female to the pair.
Nice. Super cool, man.
It was like, had to have been just weeks after that, I got my first pair of rhinos.
Oh, really? That quick?
Yeah.
Nice. Yeah, I feel like jumping into the Asian rat starts a new obsession for just about anyone, because once you get one, then it's like, well, I have to try out this species and that species, and that's how it always was in my head. And I'm so glad I have the ones I do, especially, you know, the rhinos. I know we both share a love for that. And plenty of other species. But yeah, man, that's awesome. So let's get into a little bit of what your collection's made up of today. One of the main focuses I definitely wanted to highlight was your collection of Gonyosoma. However you want to classify what's Gonyosoma these days with the recent stuff that's come out. And shout out to Justin Smith, which I should have said on last week's episode with Kevin Messenger, because if he didn't bring it up on Snakes and Stogies, I would have never acknowledged the post that was in the Facebook group. And then once he said it, I like read it and I skimmed through it really quick. And I'm like, what the hell is this? What's going on? But yeah, well, first of all, before we even talk about your stuff, what do you think about the whole thing? The whole new split of everything.
Man, I think I really like, I think it was Patrick that was talking about it, where he was like, you can accept it or you don't have to. And we don't have to, right?
Right.
You can just like, I'm not going to go calling them all sorts of different names year after year. Like, it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter to me.
Yeah.
Like we all know what we're talking about when we say, you know, when we say Bolingeri or Bolanderi or whatever you want to call it, or Jansenii or Oxy or Percent. We all know what's being referred to. And I think it only brings more confusion when you have one person that's using quote unquote new taxonomy and one person that's using old taxonomy.
Right. Well, if I start seeing Vertigrophus on labels, I'm going to be very thrown off. I'll just say that.
Yeah. And I do like that the Oxys and Jansenii were left alone, because I think those are true Gonyosoma.
Yeah.
But what did they do? They took Haineinensis and put it as its own species because it
that's been a thing. I mean, yeah, if you didn't know, like, I think since 2021, Haineinensis has been its own species.
Okay.
But it was under Gonyosoma. But now it's just Rhinchophis, Bolingeri, and Haineinensis.
Interesting.
according to that paper.
Yeah, I mean, I'm going to have to go read it myself because there is a lot of information in there, and especially
and really, all I did when I skimmed through it, I was just like, what are the new names? Like, that's what I scrolled through basically,
right.
or what are the new names? How did they classify everything? And that's what they did. It was really just assigning everything to a new genus, and then they split Prasinum and Carulum. Now they're two separate things, and the only real differences are like their eye color and the inside of their mouth color. I don't know.
somebody had a good time with that for sure.
I guess. And it was a little more in depth than that, but that was like the one statement that stuck out to me. I was like, that's your difference maker.
Right. Yeah, I don't know, man. I think I'm gonna keep calling them the same thing that I've been calling them.
Yeah, definitely. All right, so enough of taxonomy talk. You guys have had enough of that, the audience. Well, let's talk about the let's just jump right into it. I'm going in like the order of the pictures you send me, but
Sure.
Jansenii, man, I know you're having a real good time with those guys. You're really trying to expand your groups there. It's a species that has not been bred in captivity all too much, especially here in the US. And as far as we know, there's only one person who has. And then as far as I know, you and Justin are really the only guys who are trying, so to speak, at this point, like right now, actively working towards it. But yeah, let's talk about your Jansenii collection, man. So what do you have going on there? And I'm going to bring up pictures for representation as we're talking about them.
So right now I have 2.2. I have 2 adult males, an adult female, and a subadult female. And
Okay.
that right there is the adult female. I've had her for probably about 2 years now, maybe just a little bit longer than that. She's kind of an odd colored animal to start with. She's very different than really anything that I've seen anybody else keeping in captivity, and different than anything that I've seen on like iNaturalist or any herping pictures.
Just because of how yellow she is, right?
In person, it shows more as a green, kind of a green color.
Okay.
And for the most part, she is very low black. You can see the black in her back end there. And I can't see her getting a whole ton more color as far as black as she ages. I think how she looks now is how she's going to stay.
And then, like, just for reference, just on the thumbnail here, it's this girl, right? The one, oh no, you can't see my screen right now. The girl, the one that's on top, essentially on the right side, that's the one we're looking at, right?
Right.
And then the one under it, I would say, is more of your like standard colored Jansenii. It's how a lot of them kind of look. Correct.
Yeah, definitely more browns, silvers, blacks. There's a lot of them that have like a deep beige to them. I have one of the adult males here that I'm going to take out. Seems like as good as time as any.
Oh yeah, sure.
Be able to talk about it for a minute. So this is Gonyosoma Jansenii. Get a little bit closer here. And this is going to be your more typical pattern you're going to see in that heavy, heavy black in the back end. I would say past the halfway point, like right when you get past like stomach and liver, that's where that black really starts coming in heavy.
Very cool.
And this guy is wild caught, and he's been in the country for about 2 years. I've had him since about May of last year.
Nice.
I think he came in probably on one of those cold-blooded shop imports.
Okay.
They got quite a few that came through about pre-summer last year, and I'm still kicking myself to this day that I didn't get more.
Yeah, I remember they had quite a few more available. I think they had some of the blacks too, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah, they did.
At one point, yeah.
So definitely with this species, you know, you'll hear, you know, they'll bite the snot out of you. You can't handle them. They're not fun. And this animal is definitely being twitchy right now, and you know, giving me a little bit of attitude, but still not biting.
Yeah, I see that. Besides the old neck puffing, he's not really doing much.
Yeah, a decently easy species to work with if you move slow, just like a lot of the Asian stuff. If you start acting a fool, they're going to light you up.
Yeah. Very cool. I really like these, you know, these colubrids that have the big neck puff. I think it's such a cool, interesting behavior. And they look so cool when they're doing it.
Yeah, man, they're a very impressive snake, and there's really not anything else like it. Even if you talk about red-tailed green rat snakes, it's still a decently different snake. The Sulawesi blacks are a heavier bodied snake than your typical like Malaysian oxycephalum, your typical red-tailed green rat. Get this guy put away real quick. He's not happy. Cover him up with a little blanket here.
Yeah.
And as far as getting animals into the hobby, I think they're an easier animal to establish and work with than oxycephalum are, than red-tailed green rats.
Okay. Interesting.
Yeah, I mean,
a little less fragile.
Yeah, definitely less fragile. And I think the biggest thing that is, you know, the deal with the red-tailed green rats is the things like penostomes that are mistaken for respiratory infections. And people, they're just hitting them with the wrong, you know, medication, too much medication, not hydrating them enough, because I think they're treating these respiratory symptoms when they're really treating the wrong things.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Okay. And in terms of general care and husbandry for your Jansenii, what is your go-to? And I want to, after you talk about that, I want to highlight your caging in general, because your caging and the way you keep is very impressive. But just in general, how are you keeping your Jansenii, just general husbandry like guidelines?
So my go-to is like within the enclosure, I try to aim for high 70s during the day, with a basking spot between 82 and 85. Humidity probably sits at about 50%, and they utilize humidity hides pretty regularly. I would say the biggest mistake people make is keeping them too wet for too long. That's not something they really tolerate very well. And even in their natural environment, when they're way up in the trees, even though it rains a lot and it's very humid, that moisture either wicks away from their body quickly or just evaporates. So high humidity environment generally, but they don't tolerate being kept wet.
Okay. That makes sense.
As far as the adult caging, I currently have the adults in 622s, moving them into 623s. They're a super arboreal snake, and in my experience, they prefer to be off the ground than on the ground. And I think that 3-foot tall enclosure is going to really benefit them.
Nice. Okay. And then are you providing UVB or anything like that? Or is it just straight, like, I don't know, heating lights and stuff like that?
I'm currently, I have some 623s coming, and I just got, all the enclosures have T5 fixtures to run UV and everything. But once I get these new cages put in, I'm going to be putting all those UV bulbs on a separate timer for them to just come on for a portion of the day.
Got it.
PVC cages get really hot when you run big light bars in them, and man, there's my gobies at work.
That was good timing talking about lighting.
Yeah, the cages get warm when you run big UV bars in them, and I don't want them to have UV for 12 hours a day.
Right.
All the pictures that I've seen in their natural habitat, they're under very heavy leaf cover, way up tall and way up high in the trees. So I'm sure they come into like areas, where the leaves are less sparse, and I'm sure they soak up some UV while they're basking. But I'm not going to offer it for 12 hours a day or anything like that. I'll probably put it on for like 3 hours a day in the afternoon. That's probably it.
Gotcha. Cool. Now I do want to just talk about some of your caging and general husbandry in general for all your species, because it seems like you make very good use of caging. Do you use rack systems at all for anything like juveniles, like even, or are you keeping everything in kind of cages?
No, I have racks too. I've got some my grow outs and my holdbacks and babies and stuff are in racks.
Nice.
Some of the North American stuff, I have some Kasachi rat snakes that are in like 70 series tubs.
Cool.
Grow out Glades rats that are in some 70s. I'm kind of all over the place. I much prefer to keep in enclosures. It's way more enjoyable to me.
Yeah, I'm sure.
Enclosures. I really enjoy seeing the stuff. But there's plenty of animals that start out a lot better in a rack system. Like I picked up a new male Jansenii a couple weeks ago, and he's in a 70 series tub. It probably won't leave that for a while because those snakes do not want to see you.
Right.
If they're even I have 2 cats, and 2 kids, and they don't like any foot traffic until they're very, very established. And even when I do put them in, when I go from a rack into a PVC enclosure, nobody's in my animal room for a majority of the day. I work all day and then I come home in the afternoon, and maybe I get in there by 3 o'clock until the lights go out. So there's a large portion of the day where they can just sit in those PVC enclosures and have the benefits of like a halogen light, more space, clear glass, and kind of get used to that setting without all the disturbance.
Makes sense. Yeah, and I know, especially when you're dealing with wild caught animals in general, like I just know generally they could be a little more nervous and may prefer that more secure enclosure, at least for the time being, as they're getting adjusted to the new environment,
Right. And like you could take that, fresh import and put it in a PVC cage, but it's just going to find the smallest hide and sit in the corner. And most of the time, that corner is on the cold side.
Right.
They're just hunkered down, and so there's really no benefit. I'm taking up a PVC enclosure that could have another animal that's going to do a whole lot better in it, while simultaneously stressing out this wild-caught animal that should really be in a rack, in my opinion.
Gotcha. You had a couple more pictures of Jansenii. I didn't scroll through all of them, but just for the audience to see as we're talking about them. See, there's another one. That girl.
Yeah, that girl that you just had up while how she's hanging off that branch there. You know, that girl will just hang out just like that. And after, you know, because I went through the steps of having her in a 28 quart rack and then a V70.
Nice.
And then I think I put her, she was in a 4-footer for a while on the very top of a stack. So, I mean, she was, 6 feet off the ground, always looking down on me. And now she's fine to sit in a PVC enclosure that's right on the floor. It is really cool. a pretty calm animal to work with. And I think that's attributed to how I established them. Awesome.
Yeah, that's super cool. And they look great. I mean, this is like just an example of how Chaz's enclosures look. I mean, between some of these pictures, for everyone who's watching visually and follows him on Instagram and stuff, you could just see how well these animals are just being kept. And we'll get to that later. Just how well these animals are being kept and the kind of caging. It's honestly admirable, especially for someone like me. Like, I talk about it. I keep a lot of my animals in racks, and even that, some of that is just temporary for now, because I'd love to move the rhinos into caging eventually, the bird eaters. Like right now they're just in tubs as they grow, but those upgrades will come in due time, and I can't wait for that. And I'm very excited to see how they interact and stuff like that, and seeing the way your animals are kept and how well they're doing. I know it's going to be something that's a smart move long term, especially for some of those species.
I have my subadult female Jansenii. She's right in front of me here off of our kitchen. And there's a piece of cork in the middle of her 422 that she sits up on. And any person that walks over to that cage, she is all the way stretched out to the glass with her face pressed up against it. And you can open the glass and she will come right out to you. And it is
really,
it is as far from a Jansenii as you can get. The animal has never once bit me. And
okay.
She will come right out of that cage like she's your 20-year-old corn snake.
Nice.
It's
That's cool.
And it's interesting to see, obviously the people that are getting these ideas of like, oh, these animals are so bitey, they're so flighty, they poop everywhere, they do this. Those are all they're all unestablished, wild caught imports that are scared to absolute death. They need time to decompress and relax and figure out that the keeper is not going to kill them.
Right. I was going to say, probably not being kept like comfortably or to a degree where they're settling in and getting a little more comfortable. They're probably a little stressed out if they're going to keep striking at you,
Right. For the most part, that male that I just took out, if I waved my hand in front of him, he'd bite the crap out of me. Like, he doesn't care. But as long as you're not doing anything, funny or goofy or, trying to make your ridiculous Instagram reels, they're just not like that. They're quite honestly not a whole lot different personality, attitude-wise than most of the other Asian rats. Just like the same thing with like a blue beauty. You amp a blue beauty up, it's going to bite you. But My animals don't bite.
Yeah. I'll tell you what, I keep the Texas rats, those are regarded as an aggressive species. I'll tell you what, my cockeye will light me up 10 times more than any of my Texas will. And that's a fact. The cockeye are ruthless.
You have like animal to animal, everything has its own personality. But for the most part, most of my stuff, if you open the cage and tap it on the, tip of the nose lightly with a hook, that animal is turned off and you can just go in there and.
Yeah.
But, an animal that's used to being messed with and picked and poked all the time, it's probably not going to be the case for it. It's going to be much more likely to bite you. And, like with these Jansenii, sometimes they don't want to come out of the cage and they're all wrapped around a branch and whatnot. If you try to, if you're trying to pull them out of there and, really coax them out, they're not going to be happy. I try to move them, when they're in like the front of the enclosure, or when they're out cruising and whatnot, and I can like just easily hook them and remove them from the cage. Or if they're in like a small hide box or something, nice and coiled up, it's easier to just lift that hide and tap them on the nose, and you can get like a bundle of snake rather than trying to get one that's wrapped up in the branches.
Right. Yeah. Cool, man. And I know we've been talking about it a little bit, and I don't want to jinx anything, but you're working on breeding them and getting some success out of that. So hopefully good things to come. We'll cross our fingers on that. I won't say a word more. I don't like tripping on the snake god, so I won't say more than that. But I got my fingers crossed for you, bud.
I appreciate it. There's not really a whole lot to say about the breeding portion of what's going on over here, because I'm just playing with parameters and techniques and things like that. Like a lot of these Asian rats, it seems like heavy rainfall and like consistently high humidity that like tapers off at night seems to be one of the tricks to get them to go. So coming out of winter this year, we start by saying these animals weren't brumated or anything.
Okay.
Wouldn't even know where to start with brumating a Jansenii. I don't even think that's something that they really do. To any extent, I think it gets cool for a small portion of the year, but I don't really think anything on that island is brumating.
Yeah, not cool. Not cool enough for a strong brumation, at least.
Right. Probably around Thanksgiving, the male and the female went off food for a few weeks. Nothing too crazy. Maybe it was 2 or 3 weeks for the female, and then she slowly started to pick back up again, to the point where I would go to feed her, and she was like crazier about food than I had ever seen her before. I was like, okay, I'm gonna start feeding this girl 2 to 3 food items. These were like small mice at the time. Maybe a chick and 2 small mice per week is what she was eating. And I was like, let's see where this gets me. My plan was that if I was pushing the animals into shed back to back, I was going to stop feeding that head. It's like, man, I don't want to just pound them with food to the point where she's like shedding, and then 4 weeks later going back in the shed. Which that's not what happened. So she started eating like really, really heavy, and like I would feed her the one mouse, it was gone in seconds. I feed her the second one, gone in seconds, and usually by the third one, on her own, she would just be less interested. I would shake a food item in front of her face, and she would maybe puff up at me, or she would just turn and go the other direction.
Okay.
The male completely went off feed shortly after that. This is maybe November, December time. He went off food. I think it was for about 75 days total. And I actually didn't even make this correlation. I was looking at some notes last week and comparing how they had been eating through the tail end of last year and early into this spring. And she was eating like crazy, and he went off food. I was like, okay. Probably about 2 weeks ago, she went into shed, and I put her in a tub because my plan was to pair them together in those tubs. That's been one thing that seems to be, I don't even know if you could call it consistent if it's across two different people. But I mean, consistent across a handful of people when you're talking about Jansenii and Oxycephalum, that you seem to get a lot of locks when you pair them in those small environments.
Okay.
So I was getting ready to do one of these pairings as she was coming out of shed, and she had her tail draped over the top of all of her coils. A little bit of scale distension there, and that's where she sits now, and that's where we can leave that conversation so we don't jinx it. But I will say that in the event that I am successful, I have a lot of good notes written out of pretty much, this is definitely an overview of what I've done, but I have a notebook, that I've been tracking all this stuff in. Body temperatures of the animals, times that I've paired them, times of their sheds, all that good stuff. And I wish I had more to share, but I haven't been successful yet. So.
Right. No, that's still cool, man. And I think that's good that you're doing that and recording it. And granted that you, and again, hoping you are successful, that could be a very good resource for people. I know I shouted it out a few weeks ago, but even like the post Jared put up about the Oxycephalum recently, just putting that resource out there to people, I think is extremely helpful with a species that just isn't very well known. They could be very much ridden with parasites like we talked about and other stuff, especially on wild caught individuals. So having good info out there is very beneficial to literally everyone.
And my advice to if anybody out there is keeping Jansenii that I don't know about and attempting to breed them, I would start by really getting familiar with the parameters in which the red-tailed green rats have been bred under, because there are, handfuls of people now that breeding them across the world. Not just in the United States. There's plenty of successful people all around the world. Not that they're being produced in huge numbers, but there are multiple people doing very similar things and getting very similar results. So that's what I would start is looking over resources like US Gun, or looking through like US Gonyosoma Alliance on Facebook. A bunch of articles from gonyosoma.org posted up there that get to the top of the page, and that's where I would start. I would take those parameters that people have been successful breeding the Oxys under, and I would tweak them to how you're currently keeping your Jansenii.
Cool. And speaking of Oxycephalum, you do have a few of those as well. Are any of yours up to breeding size? Have you attempted them yet, or are yours still like kind of growing? Because I know you have some younger ones. I know you have some that at least look on the bigger side, but I'm not 100% sure with those.
So I don't have any adults.
Okay.
I am prepping to start a wild caught project because just like the Jansenii, I've been told a lot of things that have turned out to be not true. And I want to buy the wild caught group of Oxys and determine for myself if those, if those fables or situations are play out in the same way, for me as they have for everybody else. I could get, so I'm planning to get between 8 and 10 adult Oxys, get them all at the same exact time, so I can send it through quarantine at the same time, do everything at the same time.
Nice.
And speaking of Jared, he's probably the one person that I could point to as being the most successful with adult imports lately.
Wild caught, yeah.
Right. And he's not seeing super high deaths. I mean, the stories that you would hear with Oxys is quite literally, I've got a new Oxy, and then next week later, he's dead. And
yeah.
That's pretty much the story, to the point where, they scared me. It's like, man, this is probably not something I can handle, probably not something that I want to handle. But again, I was told the same thing about Jansen. And
right.
I will say that Jansenii do tend to be less problematic.
Well, that's the interesting thing too, because just referencing past episodes, Jared was very much on the leave them alone kind of basis rather than step in and treat them heavily. Whereas actually, if you listen to Patrick a few weeks ago, and I don't remember if he was saying Oxys and Jansenii or just Jansenii, Patrick actually said he thinks it's beneficial to step in and do a little bit more with them. So it's interesting to hear a bit of difference of opinions. But, maybe there are a difference in the type of treatments or whatever. I'm not 1,000% sure there.
Yeah, I think I'm going to have a much better idea when I get this group in and can really experience it for myself. But man,
do you have it like planned out already, or you're kind of just like waiting for? Okay,
I have every single piece set for this project. From
nice.
I have some cages that'll be picking up soon that are 523. And then I have some 70 series racks, and then like some large like HDX totes, Commander totes that you get from like Home Depot or Lowe's. Yeah, and I'm just gonna give it a go in very similar way that I have done with the Jansenii. I think I think just thinking in my head that I can have more success than I used to think I could have is like half the battle. I think if you're like, man, I really don't know if I could even keep this thing alive, I think you're already on a losing streak and kind of giving up on that creature already.
Yeah, definitely. And I was talking about it with you over text earlier, but like I even just give you guys props that are putting your best foot forward with these species that haven't been really like truly figured out, just because someone needs to put the work in to figure them out, right? So if people like you and Justin with the Jansenii are going to be the guys doing it, I mean that's great, and hopefully that helps to propel them into the hobby for years to come, you know? So
And,
someone's got to put the work in.
right. And like in the wild, Oxys are an extremely productive snake. They lay like absolute crazy. I mean, you're talking a really productive animal is putting out 5 to 7 clutches a year.
I mean, like between Jared and Jordan Russell, I mean, I feel like they just keep getting new clutches like clockwork of new Oxys.
I think both of them are about to be to where they're going to be seeing a lot of eggs here very soon. And I think like as you start dialing them in, it's like, okay, I've got like 4 clutches, and then like I think as time goes by, you'll get that animal to be like, okay, now this year I got her to lay 6 clutches, and then I think 7 is, you know, on the very high end, but it's not out of, you know, that's a recorded thing that, you know,
really
first Freight, how do you say his last name? Frank Freights?
Yeah, something like that.
Yeah, sorry to butcher the man's name. But, you know, he has, if you go on Gonyosoma.org, he has it written right in there, 5 to 7 clutches is within the means of what that animal can produce.
7 is crazy. 7 has to be going at like just straight up max capacity the entire year, like feeding perfectly and on a perfect like cycle of laying eggs back to back to back to back.
Right.
Like just like as soon as they lay the first clutch, breeding them back and getting follicular development immediately. Just in terms of if you think about how egg timing is going to work and like taking, you know, 5 to 6 weeks for them to, and I don't even know if it's that long for them to like lay eggs and then recover a little bit, then lay the next set. So that sounds about like it would take the entire 12 months of the year.
And some of the other, you know, some of the other things will do that also, like radiated rats just dump a massive amount of eggs. That same thing, you know, 5, 6 clutches a year. Daniel Snakes, he's like the only person in the country that I have found with any sort of Jansenii success. He's the only person that I could point to that is doing it.
Right.
He had some radiated rats within the last couple years, and he was like, "I'm getting rid of these because they're too much." Like he was just swimming in babies.
See, I'd love if I could do that with anything I keep.
Me too. And I think those animals that are laying like 5 to 7 clutches a year were Malaysian locality animals. So I can't speak to like the Indo or the Borneo or Philippine animals. I'm not sure if those would be any different or if they are any different. But the way I look at it is you have a snake that is very plentiful in the wild in their natural environment, and they lay an absolute ton of eggs. So what are these factors that are restricting us from getting there? And it's like, it's all stress and dehydration related. So as long as you can get these animals quickly once they get into the country, have them not, you know, sit in tubs that are super dry, paper, to the point where their like respiratory tracts are getting dried out. And you're seeing those respiratory infection symptoms, and then in turn aggravating, you know, the worms and stuff in that animal system. That because these animals have worms in the wild. It's not like somebody goes out and catches this snake, you know, and it gets imported, and like all of a sudden it's, you know, full of parasites and unhealthy bacteria. That stuff was there.
It's just natural. Yeah.
As long as you can get that animal back to zero in as timely a fashion as possible, that's your ticket.
Right. Yeah. No, it's super, super cool, man. I really like the trajectory that the Gonyosoma group is going down, because it just seems like more and more people are working with them and going towards producing them. So I hope that's the case.
And as far as like a like keeping perspective, they're not difficult animals to keep. Every bad situation starts with an enclosure that is too wet. Like
Okay.
that's where it'll happen to wild animals, it'll happen to the captive ones, everything in between. It's them sitting in super wet environments, and then also sitting in environments that are super dirty. You have to think you have an arboreal snake in an environment where it rains all the time, and this snake is hanging out up in a tree. When they defecate, they're not sitting on top of their defecation inside a 28-quart tub, for 48 hours before it goes away. They poop when they're up in a tree, and they never see it again. It never gets all over their skin. It never irritates their scales. None of that stuff.
Right.
That's
Here's one of.
That's this girl right up here. It's a little
Oh, okay, nice.
Yeah, it's that top set of cages there.
Very cool. And I'm sorry, go ahead.
That's a captive Malaysian girl from Dan, from Malari.
Okay. Cool. In terms of what's behind you, what size are the cages behind you? The lower ones and those higher ones?
This one on the floor is 622, then 6218, and then these are 2-foot cubes.
Okay, gotcha. And what are you keeping in those 2-foot cubes? Are those all, I assume, raise ups of some sort?
They're
different things.
This one is a 2021 Rhino, and then next one over is 2021 also. Then the other one next to it is a male 2021, and then a 2022 Rhino. I think a 2023 Oxy, and then the one all the way to the top is currently D.
Cool.
Yeah.
All right. That's a perfect segue to rhino rat snakes.
Yeah.
I know that's one of your favorites. Just because I'm trying to look for inspiration of what type of caging to keep, how are they doing in those 2-foot cubes? You're saying a 2021, so I mean that's kind of an adult snake at that point, is it not?
They're not large snakes.
Yeah, they're not.
Sure, in their older years, like when you get rhinos that are 10 years old, they definitely have more length to them. But like these are they're thin animals.
That's the thing, is like they are long, like down to where their tails are very long is what I've noticed. Their tails are very long, but they are very like skinny, generally small animals, so they could bunch up into a very tiny area and look like a small animal, whereas they're actually pretty long.
Here, I'll take this is a like I said, a 2021 female. Grab my little.
Because like my girl's 2022, I think. And just knowing how rhinos get, I don't foresee her growing a whole lot more, at least.
I mean, for size reference, I mean, there's guys keeping rhinos, 28-quart tubs that are adults.
Yeah, and I have my girl in a V70, and she looks small in that tub.
So this is a girl that I'm breeding for the first time this year.
Okay.
See if I can
Very nice.
Yeah. But even compared, like if you compare to like my thumb,
right?
they are not very thick snakes, but she's probably just shy of about 3 feet, I'd say.
Okay.
And put the back in here.
I mean, I hardly show snakes on my own podcast, but I mean, I'll quickly take my girl out.
Yeah, let's see her.
She was in her water bowl, of course, because where else would she be? But
yeah,
I mean, she's a 22, if I'm remembering correctly, but she's got good size. I think she's
fantastic. And to give you like an idea of like how young / small some of these animals are producing. Not that I think you should go and do this. I will say that again. Not that I think you should go and do this. Do not go and pair your rhinos at 18 months old. But there are, you get a rhino that rips food, out of the egg. And there are guys out there that have bred their rhinos at 18 months old. And I just probably like last year, I heard of somebody getting 10 perfect eggs out of a 2-year-old female.
Really?
10 eggs. Wow. I mean, and 10 is like a larger clutch, I would say. Generally, I mean, heck, if my girl hits 10 eggs the first time she drops, I'll be stoked.
Yeah. No, I mean, 10's a decent sized clutch for those guys, but especially, I mean, a 2-year-old girl. Wow.
But you gotta, like, if you look at a picture of a rhino that's just laid, the eggs are like, they're not very big.
Okay.
When you see them all stacked up, it does kind of make sense. You know how you look at some snakes and you're like, man, there's no way that egg fit there.
Yeah.
And then, but like you can like look at a rhino and be like, oh yeah, I can see how these eggs fit inside that animal for sure. My overall goal is to cohab the females in 4 foot by 2 foot by 4 foot enclosures.
Like have 2 females together, or you're saying cohab pairs?
3 females together, and then separate cages for the male outside of season. Okay.
And then you're gonna drop the male in there for a big 4-way, or
I'm gonna try, because I like to take what everybody else has said and figure stuff out on my own, because in this hobby, when everybody just goes off of what everybody has done for the last 15 years, we don't figure out anything new. So I'm gonna try all sorts of stuff. I have a pair here in the 424 that I didn't brumate. I just kept that pair up and did like a light food cycle through winter. And then both these females here were brumated. So I have 4.3 going this year in 2 different methods to figure out, just kind of start figuring out for myself what works best for me in my climate, and all those different things.
Very cool. I know certain rhinos can have some different appearances, and I know that could vary between males and females as well. I know you have a pretty decent sized group. What is your favorite rhino look, so to speak? Like, what's your favorite? Like, this is a pinnacle. How a good rhino looks.
The one you just had out.
Okay. Yeah, I really like my girl. Now, and we're gonna talk about another species soon, but I was just at the Palm Beach Colubrids facility recently. I hung out with John for a bit, and he had this one grow up rhino, man, and it blew my mind. And I said, I like that. Like, I liked that one better than my own. And mine's a very good looking one, in my opinion. But the amount of white and blue between the scales, I was just like, holy shit. It was so speckled throughout. You know how they get that like between the scales? Like this one had just like a crazy amount. And I was just like, whoa. But yeah, that's my favorite look, when they have a lot of that color between the scales. I know some can be a little more on the plain green looking side, but yeah.
And my like like man, who did you just have on? Mr. Stone. Like he was saying, the animals that are males are, you know, kind of more like the green.
Okay.
That's definitely true for two of mine. My one from Sagarmitra, from Matt, definitely has a higher speckling to him. But most of my females definitely have more of that white speckling, or higher color,
Interesting.
more turquoisey green rather than a lime flavor.
Okay. Yeah, with that said, I'm very curious to see how my juvenile male develops, because he's like starting to go through his color change. So he's getting more and more green seemingly by the day. So we'll see how he starts looking once he's fully through change.
I think if you were to line breed them for a while, you could probably get further away from that idea of males taking on one look over a female,
Right.
which is probably what's going on with my one from Matt. This is a line that he's, you know, worked for quite some time. That's not to say that somebody like Rob Stone hasn't.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's just my thought on it. I plan to line breed them, you know, to get those high colors, and
Cool.
see what I can come up with myself.
Awesome. Yeah, and then your adults, the other ones you're breeding, like what are some other cage sizes you're using, or do you really like that, you know, 2-foot cube? Is that like a good size for a single adult snake? What about if you're keeping pairs together?
I mean, I'm not gonna be the guy that tells you you keep plenty of people are keeping them in tubs. Plenty of people are keeping them in cages that are bigger than what I'm keeping them in. Plenty of people have pairs in like 18-24s or 2-foot cubes. Quite a few guys that are actively breeding them in the hobby do use a 424 for like a trio of animals.
Okay.
I think that's a good way to go. There are pretty active snakes, and I think that's something that surprises a lot of people.
Yeah.
They really do move a lot. They're very happy to sit out in the open. A couple of these guys are in shed right now, but I think there's too big of a glare. Like this girl is sitting on this piece of cork right here. This one has her face shoved down the glass. Like she sees me right here, so she's literally looking right down at me.
Nice.
And like any of these guys, you know, you can go up and, you know, wiggle your fingers in front of the glass, and they're the first thing they come right down. They want to see what's going on. Actually, my mom came up to visit from Florida a couple weeks ago, and she was like, "I cannot believe how much these snakes move." They're all over the place. And that being said, I think if you're keeping a single animal as a pet, something like a 422 or a 323 or a 424 is a great size to keep that animal in, especially if you want to see some of those behaviors that it will definitely show you if you give them the opportunity to.
Gotcha. Yeah, honestly, that question was a little more selfish on my part because I'm just trying to get ideas of what I can / should upgrade these guys to eventually. But yeah.
And these cages definitely behind me, like you said, they are grow out cages. These I'm sure in a year from now, probably none of these animals will still be in these cages.
Gotcha.
And I think the rhinos do to some extent, not that they like to be with other snakes, but I don't really see any behaviors that shows me that they really care. Like,
Gotcha.
if there's 2 in a cage, which I did have in this 424 that's next to me, I did have 3 in there prior to brumation, and they didn't care one bit. I put a male in there, and I had 4, and they acted the exact same way. There was nothing out of the ordinary.
Well, that seems to kind of be like the move for them for breeding, right? Is kind of just like cohab them for like a while for extended. I believe that's what Justin does with his. If I'm not mistaken, kind of just leave them together.
Right. And that's definitely my plan. I think when I keep them, when I keep them 3 adults, 3 females in the 422, you know, I'm not saying that I will leave them in there the entire time. Like, I might end up being like, oh, this girl just had her pre-lay shed. You know, maybe I will move her out, you know, into a 2x2 so she can lay solo.
Gotcha.
Or something of that nature. If they, you know, maybe I have 2 animals that go to the opposite ends of the cage and they're not bothering each other at all. I'll probably just leave them alone. I really don't like to make rules because I think people make rules for themselves and they only end up getting stuck.
Yeah, that makes sense. All right, cool, man. So that kind of covers all of that stuff. I did want to talk about your Phrynonax, and I'm sorry if this is a sore subject. I did want to talk about them now. So I saw on your Instagram that you got eggs, and I never saw babies. And I'm sorry if this is a sore subject. What happened there? Did you lose them in incubation, or have you just not shown them for some reason?
I thought I posted the picture. I had like the eggs went like all the way through incubation and looked no worse for the wear. And then the time came and gone, and I cut that thing open, and I had the tiniest little alien snakes.
Shoot.
Inside those eggs. So there was definitely embryos. I think I incubated them a little bit cool.
Okay.
I was at like 79 degrees, and then I heard somebody that was like all the way up to like 84. I don't even know if that's enough. Like, somebody might listen to this and be like, oh, that wasn't your problem at all. You just had embryos that didn't thrive or something like that. I saw some other people that were like more around like 82 degrees, kind of similar, I think, to like a tiger rat or something like that. Makes sense, but still, I don't think I was below acceptable temperature far enough.
I was gonna say, I don't think 79 would be detrimental, but I know nothing, so I can't give an opinion.
The other thing that I will say about this project is, to this day, I don't even think I've had them for a year. And that was the second clutch.
Oh, really?
First clutch was completely fertile, and then this second clutch like really looked good. I was really excited about it. And
they sure looked good.
Yeah, and then did you see that picture where they're all stacked up?
Yeah.
I was like, man. have never seen the pair lock, which was interesting, and they've been together for probably excuse me, at this point, I'm gonna say like 18 months or 2 years. They came to me. They were living in a 523 cohabbed, and it was maybe 2 months or so after I got them. I came home from work one day and I walked past the cage and I was like, damn, you're thin as hell. And I lifted up the hide and there was like 6 or 7 eggs under there, which you could pretty easily tell they were infertile. I kind of held out hope for a little bit, like, oh, maybe it's one of these things where, over the course of a few days, you start seeing veins in the eggs or something like that. But they molded like really quick. And then maybe 5 months later or so, she laid that second clutch. Something around that time. And really no action from them since. Really nothing from them since. There was a short time where I thought maybe she was going for a third clutch, which I really didn't want to happen. Really wanted her to take a big, a nice long break before that, especially because I hadn't even seen them lock or anything. I mean, I have not seen anything out of them. So I was like, man, I don't want her to go through this whole process and again lay, infertile eggs. Because at the time of this possible third clutch, the other clutch I had already cut them open and everything and knew that they were, no good. So I was like really trying to give her a break before going into that next clutch, which I still am.
Makes sense.
I did buy a new cage for them that is almost done. It's 623, so it's gonna be the same cage size as the Jansenii. Because that male is a big boy. I mean, he's like as thick around as a toilet paper tube.
They're big snakes, man.
He is like, I don't know, like 6.5 feet. I mean, he's like the size of a carpet python that I would breed.
Yeah.
He is a stout boy.
Yeah. They're just so cool, man. And they're such like a weirder, kind of obscure species. I have a small, juvenile pair here that I'm very excited to watch grow. And like I mentioned, I was just I got to see John's place and it really just like reignited my reasoning for why I bought them in the first place, just because they're really such a cool species. I got to check out a bunch of his. So I'm really excited to watch these guys grow over here and see how they turn out in the future, color-wise and size and everything.
Yeah, and since I got these as adults, I really do want to I'll probably end up getting a trio or maybe 2.2 little ones, either this year or next year, so I can grow my own up. So I really like, go through the process of raising everything. Again, this project was given to me like decently unexpectedly. I had quite honestly only seen a single female prior to getting them. So the girl that I have, I was up at a show in Charlotte with a friend of mine. This is probably 4 years ago at this point, and saw her sitting there in a little display, and she's that orange girl, and she had all that crazy color already, and I was like, my God, that is a beautiful snake. And my friend Zach ended up taking her home and had her for about I don't know, maybe 2.5 years. And then the
guy, if I'm not mistaken,
the guy that gave them to me, bought her from Zach.
Okay.
So I got to see, the first one I ever saw was her as like an 18-inch, 2-foot long baby. And then my friend Zach sold her to another friend, and she made her way back here to me.
Gotcha. Yeah, and that's a beautiful animal right there. Yeah, they're just a really cool species, man. I genuinely think they have the potential, just because of the color variability and all that. Like, I think they have a chance of being a bigger thing than they currently are. In the hobby.
I agree with you. And they're, again, they're not a hard snake to keep at all. It's a very, very simple animal to take care of. And like quite honestly, a lot of this Asian stuff, outside of a few, be it really important parameters, are a lot easier to take care of than what we oftentimes push people to take care of. Yes, this snake is your body and gets a little bit bigger, right? But the parameters in which like I'm keeping a lot of this Asian stuff under is so much simpler than, trying to keep these, like, even say, like, a ball python, if you're going to do it correctly, in a 422 can be a complex thing to do.
Right.
Even something like anybody that can learn how to take care of a bearded dragon, right? Anybody that can learn about how to utilize
a bearded dragon is objectively harder than so many other things in the hobby.
It is far from a beginner animal. Far from it. I went on the craziest bearded dragon deep dive, and it is bad how a lot of these animals are being
well
kept.
And I know, because I worked at a pet store for years, and bearded dragons was one of the things that we sold a lot of. We bred them at some point, then later down the line we weren't breeding as much, and we were kind of just getting them in. And when people would want them, it's my job as a responsible, educated reptile person to, and I hate to put it this way, but it's like you have to pitch the UVB to the people and tell them, hey, you have to buy this very expensive light for them or else they're going to be screwed. Yeah. And they're like, I have to pay for this light. I'm like, if you want them to live, yeah, you do. And unfortunately, people just don't get that. And a lot of people who walk into Petco and will put a tank together, and you don't have an educated person who's going to tell you the right stuff, there's probably a lot of bearded dragons that are killed on a weekly basis around the country.
Yeah, I think if you're doing a bearded dragon right, it is high up in the intermediate zone. If we're not going to call it experience, because plenty of people, have bearded dragons, and all they do is sit under their heat light all day, and they're like, yeah, I throw bugs in there and it jumps down and eats them and goes right back up. It's like, yeah, you have a lizard that's sitting under the heat for 12 hours a day. Like, this is not how this animal operates. This animal should run under that heat, first thing when it comes on in the morning, optimize its body temperature, and it is out doing bearded dragon things, not sitting under its heat for 12 hours a day. Like, right. It's just not how that animal is supposed to live. And then, like, even learning about UV, like you said, to begin with, every time I listen to a new lighting podcast, or I'm in like the advanced reptile lighting group, whatever the name of that group is on Facebook, I learn stuff all the time. And I've been keeping reptiles now at this point for, I don't even know, 16 years, longer.
Yeah.
And as far as like a lot of this, let's go back to snakes. As far as like a lot of this Asian stuff being approachable for new people, I think it's very realistic, you know, for somebody to even take like a dare I say a captive bred Jansenii or a red-tailed green rat snake and learn how to care for it, because the parameters are not difficult to hit.
Yeah. And I've said it a billion times on here. If Billy Hunt, I held off on rhinos for so long. They were a dream snake for me. And if Billy Hunt didn't convince me that like I'd be fine keeping them, I probably still wouldn't have them. I mean, that's thanks to starting this podcast. But
Right.
if he didn't say like, dude, you have Coxeye there, I think you'll be good. I probably still wouldn't have them. And like they're so easy and they do so well over here. Like my animals are little monsters with how well they eat and just overall they're healthy and all that stuff. So yeah, and even, you know, like I'm saying, the porfs too. Like I do well with them. They're great. Need to get them to breed, but otherwise they're healthy. They're doing well.
Right. And I think like my carpet python here is highly interested in what's going on right now. You see her
Yeah.
sticking her head up there.
Yep.
So if we talk about something like blue beauty rats, which is what I have this bottom enclosure, I'm going to tilt you down just a hair.
That was the next thing I wanted to talk about. So good timing.
Yeah, like so you definitely have an animal that's going to get some size to it. And I wouldn't recommend, you know, shoving this animal into a 70 series tub when it's 7 feet long, or even,
right.
even when it's 5 feet long, because they are very active snakes. But when we're talking about like pet keepers or new people getting into the industry, they're extremely approachable species to keep. From a cost perspective, like a keeping cost and setup perspective, it's far, far cheaper than a lot of these other animals. And sure, you might be going for an animal that's $400 versus say in this market a $59 ball python or corn snake. But both those animals, you know, potentially cost you more money in the long run than something like a beauty snake, especially like if you were going to go into like a advanced herpetoculture group or something like that. Like the suggested is going to be like you're going to run you know, full spectrum lighting, UV and everything on your corn snake. And like my perspective on the beauty snakes is a lot of these are, you know, living in caves or around cave mouths or just less lit environments. And I think,
or arguably the lighting wouldn't be as necessary than some other snakes.
Right. And I think if you're approaching it from that perspective, like, yeah, you're going to spend more money on something like a beauty snake or a rhino. But like my suggestion, when people get a rhino, they're like, what do I keep it in? I was like, you go to the store and you buy the medium-sized critter keeper and you hot glue the lid shut, and that is your cage for the next year for this baby rhino. You know,
yeah.
Or you go for, you know, maybe a slightly higher end, like 1 foot cube, like Reptizoo, or like Exoterra enclosure. And like, really for a lot of this Asian stuff, if you can hit 76, 78 degrees, all you need is a box to keep this snake in, and you can just put it up on a shelf.
Pretty much. Yeah. Just because we're on the topic of it, what are your thoughts on some of those like Facebook groups that you're kind of referencing, because I feel like you kind of stand, I'd say you're in like the happy medium between like your standard breeder, like I'd say myself, that keeps in a lot of racks, and then like the total extremist side that's like you need the biggest tank, the best lighting, but like you keep really good setups, and that there's obviously that's a compliment to you, but like where do you see, because like I feel like there's extremes on probably both ends, but there's this like kind of toxic social media thing where people are like, you need this giant cage and you need to do this, and then we're going to talk about your standard day job too, where you work in a giant ball python facility. Like what are your thoughts on the whole thing and the reptile community in general with that stuff?
I think that the people running those groups are very knowledgeable, for sure. But I don't think it's the only way to keep.
Yeah.
I don't think every animal needs full spectrum lighting. I don't think every animal needs a halogen bulb over a radiant heat panel. I don't think every animal belongs in a PVC enclosure with glass. And I don't think people should be chastised and attacked for keeping their animals one way versus another, unless there are visible,
signs of neglect.
Yeah, which can happen. You definitely see, large carpet pythons in 70 series racks, and they have absolutely no function of the back half of their body because they use their tail to wrap around literally everything when they're crawling around in an enclosure. I'll walk in my animal room and I have a Brettles python, and even just a 3 foot tall enclosure, but the animal is only, 5 feet long, and 2 feet of its body are wrapped around a branch up top, and the other body is just dangling down looking for food for 2 days.
Right.
So when you're able to engage those muscles, you have a very, I think you end up with a healthy snake. The same thing talking about like rhinos, you'll see animals that have like heavy scarring or like scale deterioration down their sides. And that's in my experience, different than what like Rob Stone is talking about the blisters. The blister is definitely a humidity moisture thing. But then there's this other aspect that I believe comes from a high bacterial load sitting on their skin, where you'll literally see, the animal is quite literally turning brown and the scales are shriveling up because the bacterial load is just ripping through them.
Yeah.
You'll see the same thing, just like I mentioned with the Oxys, how that animal, it poops up in a tree. It doesn't poop and then sit on top of its defecation for 2 days and wait for somebody to clean it. That bacteria will eat through that snake's skin 48 hours. I've seen it happen myself. I've seen it happen from other people, and it is a terrible thing to see. And there's no other thing that it comes from other than a high bacterial load sitting on that animal's skin. And even, especially when we talk about something like rhinos, like they're hanging out, by these like slow moving streams and stuff. And you have all these people that want to do like fancy water features and stuff. And like, this is spring water that's washing these animals, the same water never touches this animal.
Right.
Twice.
Right.
You can't run a fish tank pump, in some paludarium or something,
Yeah.
and expect that's going to pull the bacterial load out of that water enough to keep that animal from suffering skin conditions. It's just not how they work.
Yeah. Yeah. It's funny you brought the blisters up. That's something, and I don't remember when was the first time I heard about that. It might have been in the Facebook group, and it might have been you that said it. One thing I've always been concerned about, man, because there are some days where days on end, I will find that female rhino, and she'll just be in the water bowl, in the water bowl, in the water bowl. And I'm like, are you good? Like, what am I doing wrong? And then there will be a streak of days where she's up on her little tub perch, or it actually has a built-in hide there, and I have sphagnum moss in there. And then she'll be in there for days at a time. And I'm like, what are you doing? But I get stressed out about the water, but I've never noticed anything with her skin. So I've been like, okay, I must be doing something right. I try to keep the water as clean as possible. So yeah, I don't know. I don't know what people are doing wrong if they're getting the blisters, and I'm not, with that being said.
Well, trying to figure out how to, there's a lot of animals that can be kept dirty. And there's a lot of animals that can handle something like a ball python. You know, a ball python can poop in its tub and quite literally sit on top of it for a week and nothing will happen. Maybe you'll get some swelling in the lips, maybe from some bacteria load getting in their mouth. But usually they'll just go to the other side of the tub unless it's like super, super dirty. And even there's a lot of things like I even think like the beauty snakes that can handle, like a beauty snake can, you know, urinate all over its substrate, you know, and then have that urine dry and sit on top of it and not be affected by that uncleanliness. And that's just not the case in my experience for rhinos. You know, when they make a mess, I clean all the way through the substrate down to the floor,
Right.
you know, down to the bottom of the cage or tub that they're in. I also keep on cheap substrates. You know, I keep on cypress mulch that costs, you know, $3.70 a, you know, for, I think it's like 2 cubic feet. You know, it's a whole mulch bag. You know,
Gotcha.
something like I don't think like no float is the best thing to keep them on. I like smaller ground pieces, but using cheap substrates that it's like, man, even if I have to dump this once a week to keep this clean, like, great, I have, you know, 15 tubs worth of substrate, a $3.70 bag of mulch. Easy to keep, you know, keep the substrate clean. Opposed if you're using, you know, something like the commercially available substrates that are like super expensive. And it's like, I also worked at a pet store and people were like, man, this substrate is like super dirty or it smells or whatnot, but, you know, I don't want to spend another $20 to, you know, put new substrate in this cage. And I would go get some mulch from the Home Depot or from the Lowe's, so you can afford to keep this substrate clean. That's probably where I go different with some of these like advancing husbandry ideas. I don't think you need all that fancy stuff, and I think for a lot of snakes, it only causes you problems. Because I see people, you know, when they do the bioactive setups, they end up slacking on their, you know, cleanliness because they're like, oh, you know, my isopods will take care of this defecation or
Right.
whatnot. And sure, they might in some situations, but like from the like I said, I worked in a pet store for like I don't know, like 18 months or so, and that was like definitely a theme. Was like, I heard I could keep bioactive, and I also heard that you don't have to clean the enclosure, you know, because of this. Yeah, I think everything is a balance, and as far as like I said, I don't like I don't like setting into these like concrete mindsets of like, this is how, like at any point I can switch what I'm doing and, you know, move animals around or turn UV off or turn it on, turn it off. Every single one of these PVC enclosures is outfitted with a T5 light bar. So it's like if I put a carpet python in it, sure, I'll run UV. But I'm not going to run, UV in a 2-foot tall enclosure, when my Rhino is 4 inches away from it,
Right.
That's not how that animal operates. Maybe you could get away with it if you're doing like what, if you're running like something like Luminize, again, at whatever, $90 a fixture alone. If you're able to dial back that UV intensity, but then I think also like if I'm taking a shade dweller bulb and then dialing it back so much as like, why am I even using it? Like,
right.
Why am I even using it? Plus, there is no natural history that I can even go off of that is like a Rhino sits out in the sun and basks. Like, sure, it's exposed to sun, right? Lives out in the forest. Of course it sees the sun. Of course it sees UV. I see UV walking to my car also. Like, does that mean that it's beneficial for me to get that UV? Like in that level, probably not. It's probably beneficial if I go sit near the pool, and soak up UV. But it's like, and I'm like the exposure time is what I'm really getting at. Like if I run, UV in this cage for 12 hours, if that animal goes to the top of that cage, it is getting hit with UV. It's like that would not be the case, where these animals come from in the wild. They would find a small area, where the sun is coming through the treetops, or maybe hitting the water while they're sitting in a creek. But I also don't think these animals are like sitting out in the sun to get warm past raising their body temperature just a few degrees. Like there's like, I don't think there's anybody out there that's, been out in Vietnam, has, sat there and witnessed the Rhino, basking on a branch for 4 hours or even 2 hours. I doubt the Rhino stayed in the same place for 15 minutes.
Right.
Like in all the pictures that I found, if you go on iNat and look, which I do all the time because I'm always trying to see new pictures, there's one single picture of a Rhino swimming in open water, which is decently significant. It's like you can tell it's a deeper body of water and it's definitely crossing it. But all the other pictures, the animals are like, in the bamboo forest. The pictures are not very well lit because it's dark, it's shaded. And to me, that's how that animal should be kept. I will say, I was just telling somebody this the other day. I had 2 rhinos in a 4-foot tall enclosure, and I was running an old 6% UV bulb that I had. So it's like, oh, I'm just going to give, I have this bulb, fits this fixture, 6%, seems like reasonable enough. And I didn't want to put a full strength 6% bulb in there. So I figured one that's 18 months old had to have lost significant enough strength, right? And both of those animals end up developing burns down their backs.
Really?
Where there was lines that you could clearly see arched over their back, where they were like quite literally burned. And it took about a year, probably like 4 or 5 sheds for them to get back to their baseline color. I'll send you the picture later.
Okay.
I've never dug into it any further. Obviously, guys are keeping with UV. Like Rob Stone is running that Luminize. And I still have that bulb. So maybe if I got a UV meter, I could maybe figure out something if I put it under there and then compared it to what some of these other folks are doing. But to me, that was enough. Right. That was enough to where I wasn't doing it again. I run LED bulbs on all of them.
Okay. Cool, man. Let's see. We're about an hour 50 deep. All right, let's talk about you working at Kinova, man, because you work at arguably the most prestigious. It's not even arguably. You work at the most prestigious ball python facility in the world. For Justin Kabelka, who's done more work for the ball python game than probably anyone. Putting out the most high end animals. I'm a huge fan. I keep ball pythons as well, so I got an animal from Kinova. I've gotten a couple before. So yeah, what's that like, man? I know, you've kind of told me you work a lot in their special projects room, so you get to play with the fun species, the ones that aren't the pet rocks.
Yes, I clean about 700 pet rock poops before I even walk into that special projects room every single day. So I've been there. I've been with Kinova for just over 2 years now. And I started out doing the grow out stuff and cleaning babies. I used to clean the whole baby room. Then I moved over to cleaning the breeder males, which there's 4, like, I don't know what they call the that rack. I think it's like a, I don't know, maybe it's a 4440 series freedom breeder.
Yeah, I think it's called a 40 series or whatever it is. I know what you're talking about. Yeah.
It's there's 4 of those racks. So whatever, 170 something, 4, 8, 12, 16, 170 something males. So I usually take care of those guys on Monday, and then I go through anything that's been paired up for the week. They'll take the males out before I get there in the morning. I clean the males, and then I'll go through all the girls that have been bred and just double check, making sure they're healthy, taking out anything that needs to be cleaned, because they'll go through and feed them right after I clean those tubs. And the best way to get those animals to eat is feed them right after they're cleaned. And then on Tuesdays, I do the subadult or grow out section, which is 8 racks. Just like
it's a good amount of animals. And there's a lot of animals in that facility.
There's a lot less animals than people think.
Really?
Yeah. So it does change a little bit time to time. Like we have an extra rack in there right now, just because there's a lot of younger animals that are coming up, and we moved some of the older stuff into larger racks. But there's 13 racks for adult females, 4 for the breeder males. Then there's 8 subadult racks, and then there's 2 grow out racks that are like maybe they're like FB 15s or 20s. There's I think 180 of those, and those are holdbacks. Then I think the baby room holds, I think like between 700 and 800 babies, and that might even be a little bit high. Probably somewhere between 600 and 800 babies. So I even thought, I was just having this conversation recently with Justin. Kinova has never broken 2,000 hatchlings in a year, to give you an idea of numbers. There is many people that are doing far more
Yeah, I didn't think the numbers were that high either. I know you guys make a lot, but it's also like it's a smaller and more high quality than some other high-end producers, so to speak.
I don't even know that I could be wrong on this, but I don't think they've even pushed 300 clutches, which people are definitely listening and they're like, oh, that's crazy. It's really not. Like, to give you an idea, there are companies out there that, do 6,000 clutches a year. There's single companies that are producing the entire number of ball pythons that are available on Morph Market by themselves.
Yeah. It's nuts.
Like,
it's nuts.
And Kinova's doing, less than 2,000.
Yeah.
And 40% of what gets produced there leaves the country.
Yeah. I mean, you guys have been doing a lot of exporting lately. A lot of other countries are coming up, kind of building up their reptile game, and you guys are really at the forefront. Justin's at the forefront of kind of putting all those people on the map too.
Right.
Yeah. No, it's super cool, man. I'm sure it's got to be, just for yourself as like a general enthusiast and building what you're building at home. I'm sure, like, even though it's totally different from what you do personally, I'm sure it's still got to be like inspirational to a degree, seeing what he's been able to build over the years. I mean, like, and not to be like, like, I'm not that guy that thinks Justin's like God, but like, it's very impressive when people are like him to see how successful he's gotten over these years. What he's been able to do.
And like, Justin is a very like reserved person. Like,
yeah.
I walk into work and he's wearing the same stuff I am for the most part. He's just wearing
he's a normal guy.
T-shirt. You might have a $20,000 watch on. I don't know. Like, I don't know. I've never asked him how much his watches cost, but like this, like, Justin does not flaunt, like,
besides his garage.
Yeah, he could flaunt it a lot more than me. Like, trust me, he could.
Yeah.
Like I have, seen him, pulling out in a Porsche plenty of times, and he's not.
Oh yeah.
He's not burning down the street. Look at, like, he's just not. He's not like that.
Yeah.
He's a very not quiet. Like, you've heard him, talk on podcasts before. Like, Justin is probably like one of the most normal people.
Yeah.
He's a dad of 5 or 6 kids, and he's just a regular person who snake passion and pushed it to the next level. And like, he'll be the first person to tell you, like, he's not special. Like, none of the people that are doing this at a high level are special in any way, shape, or form. They have simply, like, had this passion and ran with it.
Yeah.
Didn't let people tell them that they couldn't.
Yeah, they figured it out.
Yeah. And I think like, one thing that you could attribute to his success is just doing his own thing. Just doing his own thing. I don't like it's such a calm and relaxed place to work. I think like a lot of people would be surprised if they worked at any other, and not to say that other facilities are like chaotic or like weird stuff is going on, but this is like, it's so normal that it's like, it's it's just like being with my own animals.
Right. Yeah.
There's quite literally nothing funny going on at Kinova at all.
Right.
People think there's like maybe some like behind the scenes production or like animals or like secret something. It's just not true. Like Justin he films and posts all the things that happen.
Oh yeah. Yeah. And I don't even think, like, so to speak, like how you said, like that, how there's behind the scenes stuff. I just, you guys can't record everything, right? I mean, it would be impossible with the amount of clutches you guys pump out. Though I'm sure, there's a lot of content that's out there, but it always seems like he's just one step ahead every single time. But he knows what he's got, and he's doing it. He's the leader of the ball python industry. There's no question about that.
Yeah. I think he's just really good about visualizing the next step and really doing everything in his power to set himself up when that step is ready to be taken. Like one thing, not having so many animals that you need so many employees to be taking care of, animals that are really not worth messing with. And like you see a lot of people like they think their big ticket is going to be, oh, my Dinker project is going to take off, or I'm going to, I'm going to, be pairing, triple recessive to triple recessive. And like, by the luck of the stars are just going to line up, and like, you're going to hit these odds. Like if you talk to Justin about some of these high end clutches, he knows when I add this gene in, this is the difference in my possibilities. It goes from 1 in 64 to whatever it is, 100 and blah, blah, blah. He knows every single piece of what's going on, of everything. And it is amazing to the point where somebody will be like, hey, do you know where this animal is? And he's like, oh yeah, it's like literally right there. And it's, if you're talking, 4,000 animals, and he can pinpoint exactly where this animal is. Just like, to me, pretty impressive. I have been
Oh, yeah.
Like, he just knows what's going on. And even like, if I bring up, say a medical concern about an animal, he remembers 3 weeks ago, when I brought it up the first time, and I bring it up, 3 weeks later, he's like, there's no, like, there's no detachment from his process.
Gotcha. Yeah. He always seems like he's very on point. There's nothing, like you were kind of saying, there's nothing that really gets hidden. It's not like he just has this special secret, behind closed doors or whatever. Like, it just seems like he's so on point with everything, and he really is laser focused with his collection and what he's doing with it.
Right. And like you'll see him, you'll obviously see him add new genes and stuff, but he's not like, oh, somebody came out with this new gene, I have to go get, a bunch of this thing, and fill half a rack and be the first person to get to like this new thing. Like, he's focused on growing the stuff that he has, and like, if he sees that a piece fits into his puzzle, he will use it. But he will not use it if he can't see that vision. Like, and a lot of people would know, take up rack space and take up feeders, for the hope of something taking off. And Justin just doesn't play his cards in that way.
Gotcha. Yeah, that makes sense, man. Before we talk about the good old Bull and I, fun question for you.
Yeah.
Out of all the stuff in the facility, what's your favorite ball python project?
There is I really like the monsoon stuff. I think the monsoon stuff is crazy. And,
okay.
Man, if I could get a couple of those snakes, I definitely would, because I think that monsoon stuff is crazy.
Yeah.
There's a specific snake that I really, really like. It's a Spectre Spotnose Cypress Yellow Belly Clown, I believe it is. And it is like one of the most beautiful freaking snakes. I'll send you a picture of it later.
Okay.
And like, I love that snake, but unfortunately, like, these are all, you know, very, very expensive snakes, especially the section that I'm taking care of, you know, is 350, or it's a little bit more than that. It's like 450, I think. You know, every single one of those snakes is a future breeding girl, and every one of those snakes is big freaking money that I'm looking at. So it's like, I pick this thing up and it's like, oh yeah, you're 10 grand, you're 15 grand, you're 20 grand, you're don't even have value on you, like. So I definitely have a couple favorites in there, like that DG Pompeii that they just produced is like out of this freaking world. It's like undeniably the prettiest snakes. Like, you can't, like, you don't even like snakes, okay? You people listening that hate on the ball pythons, you don't even like snakes if you can't look at a snake like that and appreciate the beauty. But then you'll take some 9-inch dirt snake and be like, this is stop. Like, just appreciate the damn thing for what it is. Nobody's saying you have to buy it.
That's what I say too, because again, I keep the ball pythons, I breed them. Like, there's just such like cool animals, like the colors and patterns, you cannot deny that there's such cool stuff there. And yes, as a snake in how it functions and stuff, like, yes, a ball python is boring, and I have no problem saying that. But to be able to experiment and play with the genes the way you can with ball pythons is unmatched with any other species. And that's a 100% fact.
Like, I don't even get this mentality of like, oh, it just sits in a rack, from like all of these people that just keep snakes in racks. It's like, what is the difference between yours? Yours comes flying out and tries to eat your face when you open the tub, and this one sits in the back. Like, what is really the difference? I get that, like, you might not like the animal like as a species, but it's like, as far as like keeping a king snake, you know, in a tub, and a ball python in a tub, like, the only difference is you open it up and the snake looks different, because most people just want a tub and feed the thing, you know, put it back. It's like,
pretty much,
unless you're keeping the thing in like, you know, a PVC cage and enjoying, you know, this particular species, and you just happen to like this species, you know, I don't get the hate on the snake that itself. Sure, I don't want to see, you know, every single table at a show loaded with them either, but there's a reason. There's a reason why that happens, because guess what? A lot of the snakes are a lot prettier than what a lot of these other people are selling. Like, that's why they're so popular. Like, and that can be said about like a lot of this stuff. Like, you compare a little rhino rat snake, you know, a baby rhino rat, it's like a little ball python that's like bright yellow or something.
Even just a pied.
It's a lot more enjoyable to look at that ball python than it is to look at a baby rhino rat snake. Or a lot of these things that start out like looking like dirt. Like, it's no wonder people gravitate to these animals that have all these bright, beautiful colors. Like, they're beautiful. That's all I'm saying. Like, we can just stop, you know, just appreciate that it's a pretty snake is all I'm saying.
Yeah, definitely, man. No, but that's it's super cool that you get to experience that. I'm sure like it's pretty awesome for you that you get to have a full-time endeavor in the animal world. I'm sure there are a lot more people who wish they could. Just in a lot of situations, it doesn't necessarily come with a livable income. And a lot of people just aren't able to live out that true dream. But I mean, you work at a pretty nice place, so I'm sure it's fun for you.
I will say that I am only part-time there.
Oh, you are? Okay.
I am
My
only
bad.
part-time currently, but I plan on taking the first full-time position that becomes available. It is
Okay.
very, very buttoned up right now. Like it is so on lock. So there's me there. There's Rob, who takes care of the babies. Chase, who's the facility manager, and he does all the adult animals and like pairings and things like that. And then Summer, who's the business manager.
Yeah.
So my proposal to Justin is going to be that he's going to need somebody to take care of these baby Bolins in the event that I make that happen. So that'll be my not that I'm counting on that as a get-in, but I joked about it with him a couple times already.
Nice. Yeah, so the last thing I wanted to talk about tonight is not about Colubrids at all, but it's about these guys. Bull and I are a species that have not been produced readily whatsoever. They currently stand, for those who don't know, as kind of like a unicorn species. Not in the way that a rhino is, but just in the fact that there's not a lot of them out there. They're not very much captive bred. There's like 1 or 2 people in the US that are doing it on a semi-consistent basis. And perhaps the Kinova facility is next because Chaz is a player with them. So, I mean, yeah. Talk about these guys a little bit, man.
So funny enough, what you're looking at right there is 2 males.
Okay. Okay.
Is yeah, I walked in the other day and told Justin, I was like, dude, these snakes don't get it. Because that's 2 males sitting on top of each other. He was like, look at that, they're laying together. I was like, yeah, Justin, both the boys. So currently at the facility, there's the adult pair. That's like between like 5 and 6-ish years old. That's the female right there.
Okay.
In that last picture with the little male curled up is the adult male. And then last year, Justin had the opportunity to grab like an 18-month-old pair from somebody that just couldn't keep them anymore.
Okay.
I believe those animals, those little ones, I believe they originally came from Nerd, and so did the adults. And we've been using that little male. He's probably, for all intents and purposes of accurate, he's probably like 26 or 28 months old. And the goal is to just use him in the hopes of that he's producing some sort of pheromones. I already know that he's producing sperm because I've seen it come out of him.
Yeah.
But yeah, as far as my work with them, when I started working there, they were in the front of the building. If you've ever seen those 3 displays that are up front, right when you walk through the door, he's shown a couple videos before. They're like overall size, maybe like 4 foot long, 2 foot deep, like maybe 5 foot high. They're probably a hair larger than that though, but I've never measured them. And the adults were living in those when I started working there about 2 years ago, which would have put them at maybe 4 years old. And then we moved them into a 824, which is what they're currently in. We cohab the adult pair in the 824, and then move that younger male in and out as needed. So as far as breeding them goes, probably around November of last year, I was ultrasounding them one day and noticed we had a little bit of follicle growth. Normally, if you look at them on the ultrasound, you can get like right where the follicles start, and you can always go in with an ultrasound probe and see like a bead of follicles, like high up in the air. It would be like just past the
bladder. Yeah,
right. Just sitting up there. So I'd seen those earlier in the year, and they were like half a centimeter or so. And then November came around, and they had jumped up to like 1.25, which was a good indicator that they had started to grow. So I started feeding her a little bit heavier, and a couple weeks later, 2.0. And about a month later, we got to 3.0, and this was probably like late January. They were like 3.0, and she was like looking really good, palpate, feel a nice big follicle at that point. It's like it was like 4 centimeters. So a pretty decent sized follicle. I mean, like a ball python will ovulate.
Yeah.
5. Justin even thinks it's a little sooner than that. I think he says like 3.0 or 3.25 is like where the actual ovulation like really happens. So it was like when we were looking, it was like, okay, this is like a ball python size growing follicle. We didn't see any breeding behavior up to that point at all. They had done absolutely nothing for the most part. They would just sit on top of each other, where the female would go into her hide box when we put the male in, and she would just like sit there. So we were definitely tracking these follicles and feeding the follicles. I was feeding them really heavy, like that picture you had of her sitting with her head under the light. Like, I mean, she's eating a big old rat.
Yeah.
But still no breeding activity that would convince me that like these follicles
something's going on.
Right. But we know like Bull and I will swell up, they'll even go as far as, rolling over on their backs, belly up, and then they'll reabsorb, or the follicles will fade. Which is exactly what happened to this girl. Just a couple weeks ago, we went back in with the ultrasound. You can't see anything. The follicles are perfectly back to half a centimeter, just as they were when I started looking at them like early November. But something did change. And that was that Summer walked into the room one day. The entire room smelled like urine. I mean, the special projects room is, I don't know, maybe it's 20 feet long.
And it's really it's mostly the Bolins and a bunch of chondros, right?
3 chondros. There's a black tree in there. There's some or not a black tree.
Black dragon.
Yeah, black dragon.
Yeah.
There's some lychees in there. A milk snake. Cape file snakes, which we didn't talk about. Yeah, there's a couple different things in there, but the room is like call it 24 feet by 12 feet. So it's a fairly large room. Summer had gone in there one day, and I wasn't there, and the entire room smelled like urine. Super, super potent. which was like the first notable thing that happened prior to us seeing any breeding activity. And this also hasn't happened since. There hasn't been a day since that strong odor situation that we've seen any sort of breeding. Maybe 2 weeks after that male just starts spurring the female, just spurring her. I mean, it was like hours on end. He was just chasing her around that cage. She would go to the lay box or go to the humidity hide lay box, whatever you want to call it. She'd come out and he is like right back to following her around the cage and spurring her. We have some footage of that on one of the recent videos that Justin put out.
Okay.
We have them, pictures and video of them completely tail tied. We've seen them tail tie and the male pop out full hemipene.
Okay.
Shoot a hemipene out. But we have not seen them lock yet.
Wow.
They are, to the point where they are like sitting there, tails spun for, an hour at a time. And he is like moving up and down, trying to figure out where to attach. And like,
yeah,
seems like you can't really find it. If you ask me, there have even been situations where it almost seems as though internally the female is like pushing out, like almost like she was gonna like poop or something.
Right.
Where it's like you can see the opening and you can see some of that light colored skin on the inside.
Yeah.
Seems like that is her receptiveness. But we still have not gotten a confirmed lock on them.
Really? Wow.
Then again,
interesting.
They are probably in that room, or I'll put it this way. Somebody is probably in that room for no more than 4 hours a week.
Oh, okay.
No, there's not a lot of
there's a lot of time where no one sees a thing.
Right.
Okay.
Yeah.
That would be pretty cool if you guys get them to breed, man.
Yeah. I think it's a pretty tall wish, obviously, because there's a handful of very, very successful python breeders that haven't been able to do it, but maybe what they need is a not successful python breeder, to maybe in some way
approach it differently.
Yeah, or maybe not look over things that I don't even want to say like seem obvious, because I don't think that's the way. Like, I'm not trying to discount anybody's abilities or work or anything, but maybe it is just somebody else looking at them a little bit differently, or paying attention to different signs. Like, to me, I think like this urination incident is like decently significant, because I have never seen anything like this before. Like, you get a big snake, like you walk past the cage and you're like, oh man, that snake peed, that snake, pooped. And this was like you walked into the room, it was like, holy crap, like this is potent. Very, very strong smell. It's like, maybe, these males out in the wild, maybe that is the pheromone, that they're coming to. That male, smelled that urine, and that's what has that's what has kicked in his, drive to make an attempt. But then again, we haven't seen any walks. So like,
Right.
I think like the best thing that I can do is just pay attention. Really, really try to look at these different signs and situations as something possibly new, rather than just looking at it as like the urine smells funny today, or like noticing that like, okay, now the female doesn't hit the lay box, every single time the male pursues her. She's like quite literally like laying out now, and almost almost offering, an ease of being bred.
Right.
I'm not
All right.
I'm not convinced on this multiple male thing either, because
Okay.
we have quite a few guys that have been successful with single pairs, and I don't think we can discount their successes.
Yeah.
There's a handful of people that have had, success with just pairs. And, Scott Flood would be the only person that I can think of that's produced them with the multiple male approach. And I believe he also said that he couldn't tell you which male, got the job done. So what if it really is the same male, right?
Over and over.
Right. And yeah, maybe the other males do play a role, but if you still have this male that is, the one responsible, which I'm sure he could DNA sex them, or DNA run some DNA on them, on the babies, and potentially figure out which male was
right.
Maybe, which would be really interesting. But I mean, we're talking multiple guys, that have been successful with just their pairs. So I won't lose hope in our older male, but I'm definitely still going to use the younger male.
Okay. Nice.
Yeah.
All right, man. Cool. Well, I got a couple wrap-up questions for you.
Sure.
Circling back to Colubrids now, but and then we'll get this thing wrapped up. But first one that I always ask everyone, you've been into reptiles for a really long time. What's a big motivator for what really keeps the fire burning for you when it comes to reptiles? What is it that keeps you going every day?
Man, these are just the coolest things that I have ever come across. There is just something so fascinating about these creatures that can live outside in these like crazy conditions. And I put it this way, like, go camping, right? And let it rain for 12 hours. See how you handle that.
Yeah.
Get stuck out there in a thunderstorm. Get stuck out there when it's freezing cold, or just baking hot when you are at like, the tail end of, the limits of what a person can handle. And like,
Right.
A frog comes hopping by. It's just like, just living life, could be the size of a quarter. And, this little animal has been able, adapt and thrive in places that are like harsh to live for a lot of people.
Yeah.
I think they're one of the most, like snakes specifically, even past like frogs or lizards, like they've got no arms, got no legs.
Yeah.
It's like this animal has found a way to not only survive, but like but like thrive to the point where you get into good numbers of snakes, and it's like, man, there are freaking snakes living in this environment. Like, you know, anybody that herps, you know, has gone out, and it's like you have 100 snake days, and it's like, meanwhile, you're like dying of exhaustion, you know, and overheating and dehydration, looking for these things, and it's like the snake comes along and it's living its absolute best life.
Right.
I think like those things alone are, you know, amazing. But as far as like so I would be lying if I said that like going after this thing as a full-time venture was not my intention. It 100% is, and I will do it. Uh, but watching people, this like totally sounds like egotistic, and I'm okay with it. But there's like people doing it worse than me, and like worse than you, and paying their bills, you know. And I have loved this for my entire life, and I'm gonna be, you know, be the person, you know, paying my bills, offering quality animals. You know,
Yeah.
people keep telling me like, you know, it's a crazy way to live. It's super hard. It's this and that, you know. And then I go to you know, a show, and there's some guy, you know, doing it full time. You know, the animals look like trash, like disgusting. Or you go to, you know, I think
Yeah.
I think there's huge potential, especially in this market, for anybody that wants to go at this at like a high level and do it full time, or even do it as a very, very high end gig, which a lot of guys do. And there are a lot of guys out there that enjoy their day jobs, so they're going to keep doing their day jobs, but produce more than enough money in snakes to make it. I don't make a whole lot of money as it is now. Like, that's why I like, people are like, you think you can make this happen? And I'm like looking at my, you know, I did my taxes, and I'm like, yeah, I really do think I can make this happen with, you know, how much I made last year, you know, working every single day of my life, you know.
Yeah.
Well, I'll make it happen. Not only because I, you know, have a desire to make it happen, but I think passion also plays a big part in it. Like, one thing that I've learned from Justin is like why are you going to take a no from somebody who isn't and probably will never do what you're trying to do? Why are you going to let this person who is never going to succeed at what you're trying to do tell you that you can't? They can't do it themselves. That's why they tell you no.
Yeah.
Like dedicate. Obviously, it's not easy. Like, these animals are super demanding, and like any person that keeps like a large collection will tell you that it is no joke. But the guys out there that, you know, live, eat, and breathe this, you know, they're doing it full time. I'm not saying you're going to see me in any Porsche 911 like old Kabelka. But my goodness, I'm going to pay my rent, you know?
Yeah. Yeah.
I'm going to feed my family, and I'm going to, you know, take care of the animals in a way that, you know, values them and edifies them and all that good stuff. That's what keeps me going.
Cool. All right. What would you say the next like 3 to 5 years, where do you foresee more than Morelia evolving, whether it's taking your collection to a new level with new species added, or like kind of just keeping the ball rolling with what you got? What do you foresee for the near future?
So as far as like even going at this as, like, say, a full-time venture, I don't have plans to, you know, leave Kinova. Like, there's no like, oh, in 5 years I'm gonna be like, like, I'm gonna be there as long as, you know, like, as long as I can. The things that I learn on a, you know, a daily, weekly basis there, like, are so valuable that I think
Oh yeah.
I would be a fool to not be a part of that team, even if it was more work for me just to go there. Like
Right.
I think working there is that valuable that it would be full, even if I didn't need that paycheck. I think I would lose more dropping Kinova than I would gain. That being said, I am definitely on a ramp up over here. There's definitely expansions that I want to do onto some of these projects. I wouldn't even call any of like the groups of animals I have complete, because they're not as big as I want them to be, because I don't want to be in a position where I have to, you know, not that I would do this, but like I wouldn't want to be in a position where it's like, man, I really have to breed these animals that bred last year because I need these, eggs,
Right.
to pay my bills. I want, make sure my groups are big enough that even at, 50% successes, even at, giving animals breaks, even at, years of certain projects taking off, or like years of projects not taking off or not producing, that like something else will, responsibly fill its place. But for something like say like rhinos, like I don't know where that cap is going to be, because I the amount of messages like I get for rhino rats is like, and I have people in my inbox right now. I can't even refer them to anybody else, like looking for, a size or certain sex of an animal that they want.
Right.
They can't even go buy it right now. And to me, that's, that's a position that can be filled in the market. And there's a lot of other things, like if you listen, to like the market update that Clint does, Colubrid and Colubrid Radio, like, I mean, we're talking like some of these like garter snakes, 1% of the market. 1% is what garter snakes are holding market. Just like,
yeah,
talk about like potential for somebody to, grow that. I have some Lake Chapala garters. Yeah, I think definitely still growing the Rhino project. Like I can definitely like, in the next 5 years, I don't know, maybe 20 females would be a number that I realistically be looking at. I have plans to like literally buy every single female Jansenii that comes along.
okay.
Because the entire island is basically being turned into a palm oil plantation. You're talking about an endemic species that once it is gone forever, never come back. Which is not the case for something like Oxys that occupy, multiple different places.
Right.
Borneo, Philippines, Indo, Malaysia. Yeah, I think there's a lot of room for whoever's passionate enough, whoever's willing to put in the work, and whoever's willing to sell their passion.
Yeah.
Outside of Colubrids, I plan to start a diamond python project. Really love diamonds. And that was kind of the thinking, and like what I said towards the beginning of the episode, like not going like crazy deep into Morelia, because there are some things that I want to dedicate like a lot more space and time to, like diamond pythons. I mean, there is like the animals listed on Morph Market are incredible for sure, but it is a pathetic amount of animals that are available. Like, it's terrible. You got you got 4 baby diamonds or something like that to choose from. And obviously it fluctuates. And then there's
but it's a very small amount.
It is a tiny, tiny amount. And part of the reason is, they sell decently quick. They move well, and people that are, really looking for them buy those really, really nice animals, the hour that they're posted. Like quite literally the hour that they're posted.
If it's coming from like Gary Schiavino, those animals are gone in 2 seconds.
Oh, yeah. He posted that. I think it was one that he was planning to hold back a couple days ago. And it was like 30 minutes later, I was like, I'm going to take a screenshot of that animal. Post was gone. $2,000. I really freaking love those snakes. And with them having like such a similar, like a similar lifestyle to like Bolin's, they definitely really intrigued me.
Right.
And if you're going to go, at snakes full time, you need some projects that are, have some significant value to them. Otherwise, you either, go lower end stuff, produce a whole ton of it, or you go higher end stuff, you can produce, a lot less of it.
Yeah.
So I think I really want to do a mix. Like one thing that I will not do is, keep and breed animals that I don't love and like. Will not do that. They will come in this house. I don't want anything to do with them. I'm not
100%.
I'm not making babies of shit that I don't want to take care of or feed or anything like that. And if you can like get me to shut up about it in like under 5 minutes, I'm probably not passionate enough about it.
Yeah, I've I parted ways with a lot of my ball pythons that I acquired over the last few years. Solely because like I just realized like the projects, I wasn't super interested about it. I was more so chasing the market. And even with that said, the market on them sort of tanked, and now I was just in a bad spot. And I was just like, what's the point? I should do what I like. And now I have only that. Actually, I'm down to only the ball pythons I want to work with, which is cool.
As far as like an entirety of what I have here, I've got blue beauties, I've got ridley eye, I've got rhinos, Jansenii, red-tailed green rats, a single king rat. I do have a spare enclosure for an older girl when I find one.
Nice.
Coastal carpet pythons, Brettles pythons, Everglades rats, Kasachi rats, Lake Chapala garters, Florida kings, bird snakes. I know I told you this, but they haven't come in yet. But I did get a pair of black Jansenii. That'll be Tuesday. We're going to call those a different thing. Then I've got some crested geckos. I've got some western giant nulls. I think that's it.
All right. Yeah, awesome. Cool, man. And my last and final question is really kind of, why Colubrids? What's your elevator pitch for Colubrids? Why should someone get into them if they don't already? Either they're brand new to the hobby or they've never kept a Colubrid before.
The activity level is really enjoyable. That is probably the biggest thing to me when I first really started to gain an interest in them, was just how much the snakes move. And like, sure, something like a coastal carpet python or a Brettles python is definitely going to move. Like you can see this one behind me. But this snake knows it's late. These lights have already been out once. So they're definitely getting a little more activity. And I have some like these ones across from me, like the lights are out and they're all moving.
Okay.
Again, it's late. It's at night is when the pythons start moving. And like, sure, they're out, but they're like, you know, they're like sitting on top of these tote boxes during the day. So like, yeah, you can see the pythons, they're out, but the rat snakes don't stop moving. Especially you come by the cage, you know, the snake comes off its little perch, you know, down to the ground and sees what you're doing. And I think it's a higher level of interaction. Uh, they're also in a lot of ways much easier to manage than say a python.
Yeah.
As far as handleability, even as far as like if you're going to compare like a 6-foot carpet python to like an 8-foot blue beauty, like the significance of a bite for one versus the other is, you know, far different. When that 6-foot coastal nails you, it freaking hurts versus you get bit by like a blue beauty or something and it's like whatever, you know, leaves a couple little teeth marks. Might hurt for 2 minutes. The defensive postures and ways they kind of, you know, tell you when they're getting annoyed or don't want to be messed with are a lot more significant than something like a python. You might get like a little bit of like, you know, like rearing back on something like a carpet python or a Brettles python, which is like, hey, I'm gonna strike you. You know, you might get some false strikes and whatnot. Like man, like blue beauty or a Jansenii or red tail green rat, you got like, you know, you got the essing up, you got, you know, mouth open, you got tail shaking, you got inflating their necks, you got open mouth threats. All these different things that it's like the snake is giving back to you as like, you know, hey, don't mess with me. And, you know, on the flip side of that, when you learn how to handle and manage these snakes, when you can see them not display those same defensive behaviors that they were before, you really feel like you're getting somewhere with the snake. Versus, I feel like I'm getting somewhere with some of these carpet pythons, and that's when, you know, they bite you in the neck. Like some of these, I have Brettles python that'll like is just like straight up sneak attack mode, and it is like the calmest snake until it just freaking nails you. It's like sure, she showed some, you know, tightening up, you know, when I had her on my hand and whatnot. It's like at that point, like I got a 6-foot snake wrapped around my arm, you know.
Right.
And like that was her cue to leave me alone. It was a, you know, it was a quick squeeze of the muscles, you know, wrapping up a tool or your arm or something, and then you get a bite. Versus, you know, some of these other things that give you a little bit more feedback. And I think they're simple animals to keep. They're cheap animals to keep. And as far as like cost of keeping, like if you look at something like a rhino rat, I mean, you could probably realistically feed an adult rhino. If you brumate the thing for, you know, 12 to 16 weeks out of the year, you might feed that thing 30 times.
Yeah.
An 89-cent mouse. versus, you know, you see some of these people that are, you know, if you're buying from a pet store, sometimes these large rats cost $12.
Oh man, yeah.
Like they're on the, you know, feed it every week or feed it every 2 weeks. And it's like, man, you're now in 1 month, that snake has eaten the entire cost of what it, you know, cost me to feed one of these colubrids for a year. And some of the things are even cheaper than that. I mean, some of these, I bet your coxseye cost nothing to eat. Some of these really, really small rat snakes or something like Dion's rat snake. And I think from like a pet keeper perspective, like a lot of people are going towards, you know, people are generally transitioning into like smaller living spaces. People want like more minimalistic lifestyles. Things that are easier going. And I think like colubrids really lend themselves to that.
Definitely.
Really well, you know, like sure, you could take, you know, you could take a carpet python and put it in a 422, you know, its entire life, and a lot of people would, you know, call that sufficient. Maybe it is sufficient. But it's like, really, if you were talking to me, like, you know, I'd be telling you to put that thing in a 6 foot or 8 foot enclosure, and like the reality is, like, that's somebody's entire bedroom wall. Like, there's just a lot of people that are willing to dedicate like the entire top of their dresser, you know, to
right.
a giant snake enclosure, when it's like, realistically, like, a female rhino can live in a 222 its entire life, and as long as, you know, obviously provide it, you know, a quality home with quality things inside of it, the animal's going to do just fine. That's the case for a lot of these smaller snakes. And I keep going to I keep going to like pet keeper, like, hobbyist as like my like talking point, because like a lot of like breeders, I think the standards do come down just a little bit in terms of keeping and everything. So when I talk to people about new things, I always try to talk about them from a pet keeper perspective, because that's the impression I'm trying to give off, and I think everybody should. I don't think, like I said, I think sometimes standards drop, and we can just say like standards as like cage size, right? Whereas like if you have a bunch of carpet pythons, you know, a 422 is probably the best size for you to put, you know, the carpet python in. But like if we're talking about you have a single snake, like I think the standard should be bigger than that. And I think that's easier met with a lot of these smaller, more manageable colubrids.
Yeah, definitely. Cool. Well, all right, man. We're just short of 3 hours. This might be the longest episode in Colubrid corruption history. I think you passed Stephen Cush and Jason Hood, who were like seconds off of each other. So I think you just made it past the mark by a few minutes. But yeah, man, this was a fantastic episode. Thank you so much for coming on. I'll have the links to your social media in the description, but it's More Than Morelia on Instagram. Yeah, but otherwise, what do you have to say to anyone who's going to listen to this episode at some point later or watch?
I appreciate you listening, and if you have any questions, definitely feel free to message me. If you have specific questions on things like, you know, anything Gonyosoma, I'm happy. I have all the videos, all the links, all the articles, everything you could need. Very, very handy, and I'm happy to pass those off to you. And I would also say to anybody listening that if there's a species that you really like, that you've heard of, you know, just horror stories of it can't be, you know, kept, it can't be bred, it's really difficult, all they do is die, I really encourage you to, one, dig into what and why those reasons are, and then not be afraid to at least try it once yourself. Because I don't think I would be keeping a, you know, I didn't think I would have, you know, multiple wild-caught Jansenii or multiple wild-caught Oxys, or I do have a wild-caught Rhino too, and I have, you know, more of that stuff on the way later this year. With our friend Mr. Maleri. And I would just say, do your research and don't let other people's experiences discount the one that you could have.
Cool. Yeah. Definitely good, you know, good advice for sure. All right, man. Well, yeah, everyone who's listening, thank you so much for listening to another episode of the Colubrid Corruption podcast. Make sure you leave a like on today's video, make sure you hit that subscribe button on YouTube. Leave us a 5-star review on the audio platforms, wherever you listen to this. Drop a comment on YouTube, whatever. Message us on social media. Feel free to do all of that good stuff. Thank you to Show Me Reptiles for sponsoring the show. Shout out to the Meteoric Serpents Patreon members. If you want to join that, it's the first link in the description of the podcast. But that is all for tonight, guys. Again, this was episode number 56 of the Colubrid Corruption podcast with Chaz of More Than Morelia. I hope you all have a fantastic night or day whenever you're listening to this, and I'll catch you on the next one. Peace.